Tyler Bond disliked airports. Even though they were part of his job, he still hated them because they had a negative impact on his marriage. Airports were full of people waiting to be sent to their destinations, and he felt like they were treated like cattle. He thought maybe he should just accept it since he was paid well to do so. 10 years ago, he had to wait in lines for check-in, security, and boarding, and then again to put his luggage away in the overhead bins while slowly making his way to his seat at the back of the plane. Now, as an experienced traveler, he didn't have to talk to anyone if he didn't want to. He no longer checked his luggage, and with SaperCheck, he didn't have to wait long at security. His frequent travel had earned him status with his favorite airlines, so he no longer had to sit at the back of the plane and could board after first-class passengers. His credit card even gave him access to airport lounges, like the one in Miami, which was nice. Despite the improved experience, he still didn't enjoy it. However, today in the lounge, he was talking with Veronica, an attractive woman who looked a few years younger than him. She wore a ruffled dress with a deep neckline partially covered by a cardigan. During their conversation, she subtly adjusted her cardigan to reveal more, catching his attention. He shared his travel and war stories with her, and she gave him her business card. He noticed she was also from Denver, which led to more conversation. She had one more stop to make before heading home. Perhaps that was for the best. After a pleasant chat, they parted ways to their respective dates. Was she flirting with him? Maybe, possibly. He regretted not realizing it while they were talking. Decades of marriage had dulled his sense of flirting. Damn, not that anything could or should come of it. He had been 100% faithful during his 26 years of marriage and had no intention of changing that. This was one of his cross-country trips, and despite his dislike of airports, he was in a good mood because of his conversation with Veronica and some success on his trip, which would lead to an additional bonus next quarter. He had just sat down in his more spacious Economy Plus seat to return home when his phone rang. He was about to switch it to airplane mode when it happened. It was his wife, Rebecca. Sigh. It was very early in Denver for her to be awake, let alone calling. Given the early hour, he wondered if it was important. Maybe. His finger hovered over the phone to answer, but he turned it off instead. If it had been one of his kids, he would have answered, of course. But whatever his wife, the bat, wanted could wait. He acknowledged that the travel that began 10 years ago, though limited, had been tough on them, but it shouldn't have caused so many arguments. He was rarely away for more than 6 nights a month, but it seemed to be too much. He wished his wife were more understanding. When he told her about the new position many years ago and the increased salary and bonuses, his wife practically pushed him out the door, then welcomed him and his money home with open arms and legs. Now, despite his attempts to treat her to wine and dinner more often and spend more time with her, she had become distant. Recently, his boss told him that if he agreed to a new position that required more travel, he could earn even more money. He hadn't mentioned this offer to his wife. It wouldn't have served any good purpose. He felt sad about the situation, but he was grateful for his wonderful children. He loved them very much. His daughter Jamie had just started pharmacy school in the fall, and his son Mike was taking summer classes to get a head start on his first year of engineering, just like his dad. Both parents were proud of their kids, as expected. He missed going to their events and having them around. He thought Rebecca felt the same way since she seemed sad lately. Despite the issues they were facing, they had raised 2 amazing children who were smart, cheerful, hardworking, selfless, and had a good sense of humor. They had brought a lot of joy over the years. He wished he could see them more often. Since the children now had their own homes nearby, he thought about downsizing their large house. Rebecca didn't want to hear about it. In addition to her job at the hospital as one of their financial managers, she was a member of several charity boards, and the house, neighborhood, and neighbors suited her image. The slight additional upkeep of the house and yard compared to a smaller home was one of the sacrifices Tyler had to make for his wife's social standing. Sigh. The flight was tedious, as it often was, or rather, he was tired from the long flight. He wasn't in the mood to watch a movie, and he had barely slept during the trip. So he decided to close his eyes for a few minutes. He was awakened by the sound of landing. He was surprised that he had slept through almost the entire trip. He turned his phone back on, and it looked like something had exploded. Voicemails and messages from everyone close to him. He called his daughter. "Oh my God, Dad. Thank God you called. Jamie, you knew I was on the plane. What's going on? Everyone tried to reach me, but no one told me anything." "Well, I'm not going to say anything right now. Come by my place since it's on the way home. Mike will be here too. Jamie, you can't leave me hanging like this. Are you and your brother okay? Is your mom okay? Has anyone been hurt? I'm sorry, Daddy. It's just a big mess. No one's hurt. Well, none of our loved ones. I'll explain everything when we see each other. Tyler rushed from Denver International Airport to his daughter's house near the university faster than ever. He knocked on the door quickly, and when she answered, she looked like she was about to cry. Inside, he saw his son sitting quietly in a chair. What happened, honey? He asked. His daughter replied, Oh, Daddy, we're so sorry. It's a big mess. Mike then added, It's like a big chaos. Tyler asked, Tell me what happened. Jamie continued, We didn't want any of this to happen. It's just like a snowball. What exactly didn't you want to happen? Well, we wanted something to happen, but not like this. Honey, you haven't told me anything yet? Just tell me. Okay. It started about a month ago when you were on your last trip to Boston. I was going to visit Mom during lunch, and as I approached, I saw a Tesla pulling into your garage, which was strange. I didn't recognize the car and didn't know who it could be. From the street, I saw that the lights were on in the house, and by the way the shadows were moving, I could tell someone was going to the garage. I called Mom on her mobile, but she didn't answer. I waited a few more minutes and called her again. When she answered, I asked if she was home, and she said she was still at work and would talk to me later. Obviously, I suspected she was lying, so I hung up and watched the house a little longer, wondering what to do. After some time, I moved my car out of sight and sneaked up to peek into the garage window. Mom's car was there along with the Tesla. I was furious. I went back to my car, called Mike, and told him what I had seen. I wanted to know who was with Mom. Enraged, I spent the first 6 hours waiting for him to leave, and then Mike came and watched until he left at 7 a.m. the next day. Mike followed him to work in a big office building in Cherry Creek, went in a few minutes later and asked the security guard if he knew the man who had just entered. The guard gave Mike his name, and Mike called me. We didn't know what to do. I called Mom the next morning, upset that she hadn't answered my call, and since then, I've been cold towards her. During her last trip, we kept watch again, and the same thing happened. So Mike and I decided to do something about it. Mike intervened. I was there when you checked the smoke detectors a few weeks ago, and when I saw the detector in the garage, I had an idea that seemed funny at the time. I guess it's not funny anymore. We were scared to tell you because we knew you'd want to catch them in the act and might even hurt the guy, or possibly Mom too, either by accident or on purpose, and then you'd end up in jail. We didn't want that. We wanted to find a way to mess with them and embarrass them. I suggested to Jamie that we sneak into the garage around midnight and create a little spark, like what sometimes happens with electric cars, to make enough smoke to set off the alarm. I figured the smoke detectors were working fine, so nothing would happen except the fire department showing up. Tyler replied, I guess that means you didn't know there was a heat detector in the garage, not a smoke detector. Mike looked surprised and said, Oh, crap, that's why the alarm took so long to go off. Tyler just shook his head. Jamie intervened. He thought the need for the fire department to come would be embarrassing, but that wasn't enough. So I also kind of intervened. Tyler looked stunned as he began to grasp the various implications of what his children had told him. He asked, It looks like my marriage has gone up in flames. Is our house intact? Jamie replied, What? Oh, yes. Well, for the most part. Oh, God. I visited the house after Mom left for work both times, and each time one of Mom's Magnum wine bottles was in the trash. I know she likes to keep the bottle chilled most of the time, so it seemed like a perfect opportunity to exacerbate their embarrassment. These days, it's very easy to buy Viagra or its equivalent online, so I ordered some. I'm studying to be a pharmacist, and with my chemistry degree, it wasn't hard to turn the pills into a liquid. Tyler interjected, You didn't do that. I'm afraid I did. Yesterday afternoon, I snuck into the house. I checked the wine fridge, and Mom had already opened her Magnum bottle, sealed it, and put it back. It turned out that only a glass or two was missing, so I poured in my mixture, stirred it, and put it back, making sure not to leave any traces. We thought they would have to rush out of the house when the fire brigade arrived, and he wouldn't be able to hide his eyes, which would expose her and her lover in front of all the neighbors. It was Mike's turn to speak. Just before midnight, I crawled through the garage window, which I had opened beforehand. It took some time, but by using the car's charging port and some tools, I was able to create an arc that made the metal around that area get hot. I don't know if his car was faulty or something, but suddenly there was a shower of sparks. I knew it would trigger the smoke alarm, or at least I thought so, and I got out of there as quickly as I could. Apparently, after I left, the battery caught fire. I think that's what happened because, before the firefighters could get there, not only his car, but also Mom's car was on fire. By that time, the alarm in the house had gone crazy and the whole neighborhood could hear it. Jamie said, "It's like her brain just shuts off." This is where the story gets interesting. Even more interesting, Tyler asked. More interesting than my wife cheating on me and my house burning down. Jamie continued. We told you the house didn't burn down. Oh, great, Tyler replied sarcastically. Anyway, when I got to talk to Mom this morning, she said she jumped out of bed when she heard the alarm. She tried to wake up her lover, Eric, but he wouldn't wake up. He had drunk a lot and wouldn't wake up, so she thought he was dead and panicked. She called 911 from the home phone and started screaming, "Fire? Call an ambulance." Then she grabbed him by the ankles and started dragging him from the bedroom to the exit, not realizing or thinking about the fact that they were both stark naked. He was too heavy for her to carry down the stairs, so she kept dragging him. Again, she wasn't thinking, so he was lying face down. Remember that nail at the entrance to your bedroom that popped up enough to catch one of my socks a few months ago when I was visiting? Well, it looks like you either didn't hammer it down or it popped back up, because guess what? Mom dragged Eric and he was heavy enough. Or the nail popped up even more and it caught him. Here's where all that Viagra he drank with the wine comes into play. Not only did the carpet nail cut his groin, but he was also hard, and the nail cut him there, as well as all along his stomach and face. Since the house was quite dark and he was unconscious, Mom didn't realize this and kept dragging him down the stairs. Bump, bump, down the steps. I almost feel sorry for the guy. In addition to his 3-foot scratch, which was bleeding profusely from his groin, he had carpet burns from his groin to his nose, which must have burst open when he fell off the bottom step onto the tile floor in the kitchen. Wham! I'm sure being dragged across the tiles to the front door wasn't very pleasant either, especially when his head bounced over the threshold, hit the concrete porch, and rolled down the steps to the sidewalk. Bump, bump, wham! It looks like he has road rash and a terrible wound on his face. Tyler didn't feel too bad about it somehow. Mike took over the story. The home alarm must have woken up the other neighbors because it seems there were quite a few spectators when Mom dragged her lover. Both of them stark naked, out the front door in full view of everyone. Timothy from across the street even recorded the scene on his phone and sent it to me. Here, take a look. Tyler couldn't believe what he was seeing. On Mike's phone was a video of Rebecca, naked, backing out of the front of the house, and sure enough, Eric's head was bouncing off the concrete as he was dragged down the steps by Rebecca. Either her adrenaline was through the roof, or she was stronger than he had thought. The ambulance and fire department arrived right after that. He watched as the crews rushed into the house to open the garage door and started spraying everything in and around the garage with hoses. The paramedics approached Tyler's naked wife and covered her with an emergency blanket. Then they turned Eric over, revealing his still erect, bleeding genitals for everyone to see. Tyler felt relieved that he measured up favorably compared to her lover. Mike explained that Eric's electric car had a device that sent an alert to his home phone when something unusual happened. Eric's wife, Francine, received the alert and saw that her husband's car was at someone's house instead of the airport where it was supposed to be. She rushed over to check it out. As Tyler continued to watch, he saw that the paramedics couldn't wake Eric up. He was alive but unconscious, so they brought a stretcher from the ambulance. But before they could secure him, Francine arrived and flipped the stretcher over, causing Eric to fall face first onto the sidewalk. He would need more than a few stitches to deal with this new cut on his head. Should he feel sorry for him? Tyler couldn't recall ever seeing anyone so angry. Francine landed several good blows to Eric's groin before they could pull her away, still kicking. When they put him back on the stretcher, his tool, still bleeding, now looked crooked, which it hadn't a few minutes earlier. Tyler wondered if Eric had woken up when they tried to fix that. He hoped so. Rebecca stood in horror as at least a dozen or so socially educated neighbors watched the unfolding tragicomedy. Francine lunged at Rebecca, but instead of hitting her, she yanked off the blanket, leaving Rebecca naked again for at least a minute until another blanket was found. Seeing his wife naked on their front lawn, Tyler thought, "Damn, I'm going to miss those breasts." The neighbors certainly didn't miss either them or her landing strip in the groin area. It's safe to say that her grooming habits were no longer, a private matter. Shame. When the police arrived, the flames seemed mostly under control, except for Eric's car, which was still sparking and smoldering. Francine, practically foaming at the mouth, was yelling at the police to arrest Rebecca. On what charge? No one knew, but an officer led Rebecca, clearly shaken, to the back seat of the patrol car just to keep her away from Francine and the onlookers. Jamie said, "We knew that Eric was married to Francine, but we didn't know she was the district attorney's daughter. It seemed she or he had enough pull to get Mom taken to the station and put in an interrogation room for the rest of the night, dressed only in that blanket. They released her around 6 a.m. when she tried to call you, but you didn't answer. And some people say that God isn't merciful," Tyler thought. The problem is that because Eric didn't wake up immediately, they did a toxicology report on him, and the only strange thing they found was trace amounts of Viagra. When his wife heard this, she was furious because he has a bad heart and would never have taken something like that. At least, that's what she said. The medic said it was a good thing the fire happened because it meant he got to the hospital quickly enough for them to prevent him from slipping into a coma. Otherwise, it could have been really bad. Tyler asked, "Even worse?" Mike explained what happened. The police took Mom to the interrogation room, and this morning, officers came to the house to gather evidence. But the firefighters had knocked over a bottle and glasses during the incident, breaking them. With all the water and broken glass, along with the remnants of the wine, there was no uncontaminated evidence left to collect. When I went there earlier, the only thing the police saw was a trail of blood going down the steps and out the door. I think they're just questioning Mom in the interrogation room right now. Everyone assumes Eric took Viagra, even though he wasn't supposed to. Without any solid evidence, I'd be surprised if they keep Mom much longer. Also, they managed to pull the Tesla out of the garage. This morning, Mom and Francine were all over the news, and it wasn't a pleasant sight. Tyler asked, "Where is your mother now?" Jamie said, "She's still at the police station. They said they'd call us when we can come and get her. I'm so sorry, Dad. We should have just told you instead of trying to get back at her. We were so angry and only made a bad situation worse." While his kids looked scared, a smile began to slowly spread across Tyler's face. He stood up and said, "I appreciate what you guys tried to do. Really. It means a lot to me. Honestly, I don't think you made things worse. Given all the circumstances, I think it turned out pretty well. I'm going home now. Your mother will need you both. I'll let you decide who will pick her up. It won't be me." They understood. On the way home, Tyler stopped by the bank and transferred half of their accounts into a new account in his name only. He would take care of the rest of the finances later this evening or tomorrow. He stopped at the local market and picked up some garbage bags to take his clothes to the dry cleaners. As he suspected, everything in the house now smelled of smoke. He didn't pay much attention to the fire damage. Instead, the bloody trail across the porch and down the steps was clearly visible. He smiled, entering the front door, which was closed but not locked. The bloody trail continued up the steps. He chuckled. Part of the kitchen leading to the garage looked like a war zone. Ignoring the blood, he went to the bedroom and packed all his clothes into bags to take to the dry cleaner. His insurance company would get the bill. He noticed the bed was unmade, and the thought saddened him for a moment. But only for a moment. He knew what he was going to do. Divorcing his wife was the obvious first step. He planned to separate their finances, find an apartment, travel more, and use his free time to spend more time with the kids and have more fun. He thought about asking Mike to send him the video so he could share it with the local news stations, thinking Rebecca's volunteer groups might get more attention with a board member's story in the news. As he loaded the last bag into his car, a police car pulled up, and the officers asked for his identification. One of the officers seemed embarrassed, probably knowing about the incident or having seen the video, and asked, "Are you going to be okay?" All the events of the day ran through Tyler's mind like a game show wheel. When he remembered Veronica's business card, he smiled broadly. "I'm going to be just fine, officer. Rest assured, I'm going to be just fine." Second story, I'm a 22-year-old woman who's been dating my boyfriend for almost 3 years. We've had issues with him cheating before, like talking to other girls and staying in touch with his ex. He always said it was just conversation and got mad at me for looking through his phone. Last week, after he left for work, an alarm went off on his second phone. When I went to turn it off, I saw a dating app in his Siri suggestions. I didn't go through his phone, but I downloaded the app on my phone and found his profile, which showed he was active on it. When he got home, I broke up with him without telling him what I found. He pleaded and cried, insisting he hadn't done anything wrong. Foolishly, I told him that if we got back together, I would do everything to him that he's done to me, hoping it would discourage him from cheating again. Today, while he was at work, I saw the second phone and felt the urge to look through it. The dating app I saw before was deleted, so he must have known I found it. However, I did find a message thread with only an outgoing message from him that said, "You serious?" sent earlier this month. The number was linked to an older woman I don't know. I started taking pictures of the call log, but didn't get to finish because he came home unexpectedly. I did see that he had back and forth calls with his ex a few months ago. I took screenshots of everything I found, but I want to finish checking the call log. I'm thinking of waiting until I'm back in my hometown and he's in his, which is hours away, to send him all the screenshots and then block him on everything. What do you think? I'm too embarrassed to talk to my friends about this. P.S. After I found the dating app, he came home with flowers, a bottle, a card, and a gift card. Was that an admission of guilt?